Great. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're just letting people in from the waiting room now. We're going to let some more folks trickle in over the next couple of minutes. But in the meantime, if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat feature, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen, the little speech bubble, feel free to do that in the chat while we give people a couple more minutes to log on. Okay, we're going to give it like another minute or so before we get started. Welcome, everybody. Please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat feature. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We've given everybody a little bit of a grace period to log on, but I think in the interest of time, we're gonna jump right in. So I just want to say a big welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Alicia West, and I am the Director of Public Design Outreach for the DEP. This is our second in a series of public engagement meetings that we're hosting about the design of the Gowanus CSO facility. And we're really thrilled to have such a nice group participating this evening. I want to give a shout out to Dan Wiley from the Congresswoman's office. Thanks for joining us, Dan. And I'm just looking through the other attendees quickly. We have a really nice group tonight. Thank you. So I just want to do a little Zoom housekeeping first. And if you could go to the next slide, please. So please mute yourself while others are speaking. If you have questions or comments in this first part of the meeting, feel free to type them into the chat. You'll see the chat feature is the little speech bubble at the bottom of your Zoom screen. The meeting is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel after this evening. So we'll have an opportunity to break into groups for a workshop. And in that workshop, we ask that you raise your little digital hand. You can do that with the reactions button, which is the little smiley face at the bottom of your screen. Thank you. And the workshop facilitators will call on you and you can unmute yourself to speak. You can also use the chat feature in the workshop if that's what you prefer. So we're really hopeful that everyone can keep their comments respectful and listen to one another tonight. We're really excited to share where we're at and hear all of your thoughts. If everybody could just mute because we've got some background noise. Classic Zoom. Awesome, thank you. All right, so we have a really excellent team of design professionals working on this project. And if you attended our last meeting in February, these faces should be familiar to you. Many of you know me and Kevin Clark, who is DEP's portfolio manager for the Gowanus Superfund projects. Our consultant team is listed on the right, and tonight you'll hear from and work with members of our architecture and landscape architecture teams, Seldorf and Scape. Anna Holcoulter, Gina Worth, and Kevin Keating will introduce themselves soon. We're also joined today by our fellow city agencies. I saw Elizabeth Earnish from the Parks Department, and I think Ben Ireland from Sanitation is going to be joining as well. Thank you both for being here. So let's get into our agenda. So we're going to kick off the evening with a presentation from our team to make sure that everybody has the basics on the project. Many of you have been involved with this for a long time. Some of you may be new to this. We just want to make sure everybody is starting out with the same information. We're going to report back on what we heard from folks during the February workshops, and we're going to share conceptual designs for the sanitation salt shed, as well as conceptual program diagrams for the public open space. Then we're going to break into workshops to hear directly from you. So the feedback that we received in February was incredibly helpful, and we hope that you'll see your comments reflected in what we have to share with you tonight. Of course, as we've discussed, there's a lot of program that has to fit on this space to ensure that we have continued city services. And we need to really strike a balance with what will fit and what's feasible for our city partners. So like I said, we're very excited to share and to hear from all of you. And so we hope that we can continue to keep your priorities in the forefront as the design progresses. Go to the next slide. And I'm going to hand things over to Kevin Clark, DEP's portfolio manager, and he's going to do a brief overview of how this project came to be, as well as our goals and timeline. Kevin?
Thank you, Alicia. Good evening, everybody. As Alicia said, my name is Kevin Clark. I'm a portfolio manager with DEP's Bureau of Engineering, Design, and Construction. And I know that a lot of people are already familiar with this background that I'm about to present, but for anybody new in the room, we just want to review it really quickly. So in 2010, the US EPA designated the Gowanus Canal a Superfund site, identifying a number of potentially responsible parties, or PRPs, including New York City and National Grid. The EPA has required the city to remediate petroleum-based contaminants at the canal, and specifically for the city to reduce combined sewer overflow discharges to the canal. In order to do that, the DEP will construct 2 combined sewer overflow facilities, and the one at this site will store as much as 4 million gallons of combined sewage until it can be pumped back to the Owl's Head Wastewater Resource Recovery Facility in Bay Ridge for treatment. And while satisfying this EPA mandate, the project does create an opportunity to provide meaningful open space for the community, and that's what we're here to discuss. You might recall this slide from the last public meeting we had. Just to review again, what a CSO is, or what a combined sewer overflow is. So during During dry weather, all sewage that comes from people's homes and businesses is sent to the wastewater resource recovery facility. In this case, it's the Owl's Head facility in Bay Ridge, and that treats the sewage. However, when it does rain, the sewers can reach capacity, and an overflow would occur at a regulator shown here as number 4. And so you have a discharge of diluted sewage that would overflow to the adjacent water body. In this case, would be Gowanus Canal. Should also mention that approximately 60% of the sewers in New York City are so-called combined sewers. Next slide, please. So CSO retention facilities collect and store combined sewer flows during wet weather events and then pump that flow back to the wastewater treatment plant. Here's a cutaway of the proposed facility at Owl's Head. So the below ground, most of the facility is below ground, and the sewage is stored in those below ground tanks. There is a head house, as shown to the right, that houses all the mechanical and electrical equipment, including the screens that will screen out any solid material that's in that sewage, provide odor control, and then also houses the pumps that pumps the flow back to the wastewater resource recovery facility. Next slide, please. So our goals in approaching this project are to obviously meet the EPA mandate to construct the CSO facility, also to construct that facility in a resilient and sustainable way, and also provide a welcoming and valued community asset. We have heard from many folks that embedding a sense of the environmental stewardship and education into the project is a priority, and we'll be working to ensure that that project meets that goal as well. Brief discussion on the schedule. We do have a very ambitious project schedule to meet EPA mandated milestones on both the design and the construction side of things. And we've also been coordinating closely with the existing partners on site. That's the Department of Sanitation and their partners, Big Reuse and the Gowanus Canal Conservancy. This is the second in a series of public engagement meetings, and we'll continue to schedule those meetings throughout the year as the design advances and we're able to focus in on more detail. The first start of construction is actually underway. It's the you might have noticed that the new bulkhead is being constructed on the northern edge of the Salt Shed Peninsula. And then as far as the CSO tank construction, that is expected to begin in 2023. And as that's moving along, we will have a dedicated community liaison to be on hand as a direct contact for any community concerns. And construction is expected to be completed before 2030. Now I'm going to hand it back to Alicia to report back on the last meeting.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for covering that. So we wanted to recap a little bit about the February meeting and report back what we've heard in the 3 workshops. As I said, all of the last meeting was recorded and it's up on YouTube. So, if you're interested to watch the various workshops, if you weren't able to participate or if you were in one workshop and were curious what happened in the other one, feel free to watch those. But I just want to recap a little bit for everybody now. So the first public engagement meeting, as I said, was on February 10th, and we had over 140 people attend, which was really amazing. At that meeting, Kevin did a similar overview to what he just did, and we also walked through the facilities that are on site that we need to put back on site, and what we need to build for DEP's project, and then also opportunities for public open space and programming ideas. So then we broke into 3 breakout rooms, and we heard a lot of really great ideas from all of you, ranging from really big picture ideas to the more sort of granular ideas that we might get into later in design. So what did we hear? Anna, next slide, please. And forgive me while I read this slide, but I think that's sort of the easiest way to go about this. So we had sort of posed questions that broke the categories of feedback down into 3 categories, right? So that we could sort of focus and understand what we were talking about. So in terms of the facility buildings that we would be creating here, folks were really interested in making sure that the architecture and the urban character was reflective of the Gowanus neighborhood. And they were interested in sustainable strategies such as green roofs and solar panels. They were looking for opportunities for historical interpretation and educational signage related to DEP's operations, and really looking for a reduction in the vehicular presence and a support of pedestrian access around the entire waterfront and the access drive cul-de-sac. In terms of waterfront experience, folks are really interested in having an ecologically responsive and natural shoreline that supports different habitats and native species, looking for a variety of edge conditions, including hardened bulkheads, softened edges, and boardwalks, looking for boat launches and access points for pedestrians, and improved access and circulation across the site, meeting all accessibility needs. In terms of community programs and amenities, people told us that they were looking for spaces for outdoor education, areas for community gathering and performances, and maybe even dance parties. We heard a little about some fun dance parties going on. Integration of multifunctional public spaces that can serve different community needs, so really like multi-purpose, and opportunities to integrate local art. Anna, you can go to the next slide. So this is the plan that we shared at the February meeting, and it's overlaid with site program suggestions and the precedent images that folks responded strongly to. So some of the big moves we're looking to make are to prioritize spaces for outdoor learning and flexible public programming, provide an ADA accessible boat launch at the 6th Street turning basin, make the 2nd Avenue Street end a primary waterfront access point, and provide a continuous promenade along the waterfront with areas of softened shoreline and tidal marsh, and really integrate habitat opportunities into those varied edge conditions. So I'm going to hand it over to Kevin Keating from Seldorf Architects to walk you through the site and the circulation in the various stages of work. Kevin, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Alicia. And thanks, everybody. My name is Kevin Keating. I am a partner at Seldorf Architects. It is a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Please allow me to take just a little bit of your time to walk you around the site and introduce you to our conceptual proposals for the salt shed. So what is on the site today? The site includes a variety of things. First, we have the DSMY salt shed, and adjoining it is the big reuse composting facility. Second, we have many community engagement programs run by the GCC in combination with the big reuse. Third, there are ecological elements on the site which we hope to incorporate into the proposal for the peninsula. And lastly, there are a multitude of manufacturing and industrial businesses south of 5th Street, which DEP is working to relocate. So, what future facilities are needed in? This project starts with the city's need to build a CSO facility. Secondly, the project needs to provide continuous and uninterrupted facilities for the DSMY operations. This will include a newly designed and constructed salt shed, which we'll get into shortly. In combination with this, we will also be providing new facilities for composting, as well as dedicated space for the GCC. And lastly, but most importantly, for the community, we are looking to provide public waterfront access. Next slide, please. This here is a plan of the site in its temporary condition. This shows you how the site will be configured as we are building out the CSO facility. Everything in orange is the construction zone. The DSMY salt shed and the yard in red are going to be relocated south of the peninsula, as you can see here. And the composting facility in blue is located for easy access near 6th Street along 2nd Avenue. The salt shed is in its permanent location as indicated here, but the composting will be relocated in its final condition. Next slide, please. This here is a vehicular circulation diagram. During construction, we'll have construction trucks coming in and out of 2nd Avenue. DSMY salt and composting trucks will also have access, two-way dedicated access off of 2nd Avenue. And south of that, towards 6th Street, and very important, we're maintaining public access for those who drop off their compost. Next slide, please. This slide here is indicative of the location of the permanent CSO facility and the DSMY salt shed. You can also see that we are planning to reposition the composting facility to the west of the salt shed. That's the area in blue. Our intention here is to locate it adjacent to the proposed GCC open space where it will be permanently situated. Next slide, please. I know there's a lot of arrows in this one, but this is the final condition. What we're trying to indicate here are primary pedestrian access points. One will be at the 6th Street turning basin, and the other we're hoping to situate up at the 2nd Street street end in order to prioritize public access around the waterfront. DSMY trucks will access the salt yard through the central access alley and leave through the gate on 2nd Avenue. DEP's access will primarily be from 2nd Avenue, but there will be times when DEP trucks need to access the top of the tanks, which is located to the west of the facility. We're working together now with GCC and Big Reuse to understand their future needs and their access requirements, but they will access their territory or space, I should say, from the central alley. Our intention is to make sure that this access alley, a shared street, will work both for the public and for the operational needs of the two facilities. Now we'll walk you through the conceptual design for the salt shed. This proposal will be reviewed at a conceptual level with the Public Design Commission next week. In order to properly design this facility, we and the team had many meetings with the DSMY to understand their needs and the requirements. So simply put, here are the main drivers. First, let's start with the salt pile. This salt is used to help remove snow and ice during winter snowstorms, as we all know. In order to maneuver that salt around the site, they need push walls to push the salt against, as indicated in the second image. Thirdly, they need an enclosure above that pile to protect the salt from the elements. This enclosure needs to accommodate the highest point at which the front end loader can extend vertically. And lastly, the site needs to accommodate 75 plow blades. They will be placed on 25 racks within the perimeter of the site. Next, please. Now that we understand the basics of the salt shed, let us dive into our understanding of the context in which this project is in. The site is located in the IBZ zone, the South Brooklyn Industrial Business Zone, which was established to grow and preserve the industrial space in an urban environment where neighborhoods change quickly. The character of the site is distinctly industrial, and the surrounding Gowanus neighborhood is marked by a consistent and monochromatic material palette of low-rise warehouse-style structures. Next slide, please. It is an industrious character, and that this is something that the community has told that they want us to uphold in the design. The community has mentioned that they want the facilities to be true, honest, and representative of the Gowanus environment. These here are a series of photos that we have taken that speak to us and are reflective of the prevailing character around the site. We agree with the community and believe that architecture for these structures should be reflective of the surrounding aesthetic. Our effort is to make these buildings have a combination of grit and grace that is emblematic of this area. Next slide, please. To that point, we have identified a selection of materials that are tough and refined, industrious yet graceful. In keeping with the community's recommendation to keep the city's facilities honest to their industrial character, the proposed salt shed is designed with 3 primary architectural elements following DSMY's requirements. First, the cast in place concrete for the push walls. These can withstand the force of the salt being pushed against by the front end loader. The corrugated metal siding for the enclosure above the pile, and a transparent screen made of metal mesh for the perimeter fencing. The material palette has been selected to be restrained and contextual to the neighborhood's industrial yards, sheds, and buildings. Next slide, please. These materials will be applied in 3 simple yet functional forms. First, the concrete will be used to create the push wall that wraps the perimeter of the site. We have designed the wall so that it starts at a very low elevation at 2nd Avenue, page right, and then gradually rises as it makes its way towards the salt shed to the left of the page. Secondly, the corrugated metal panel is employed as a refined surface treatment on the shed, protecting the salt from the elements. In addition to this, I just might note that there will be a solar array on top of the roof. And last, the screen made of metal mesh creates visual transparency and a protected enclosure that is needed around the eastern end of the facility, particularly along 2nd Avenue. We wanted to create a visually porous enclosure at this end as one walks along 2nd Avenue. Ultimately, the industrial yet refined design is intended to sit within the waterfront landscape, striking the balance between natural systems and industry, which is a defining character of Gowanus. Some suggestions of the waterfront landscape concepts are here in the next slide. This is a 2-dimensional elevation. For those that may not be familiar, it is a flattened view of one side of the project. This drawing shows how the design will look if you are looking north at the salt shed or walking along the water's edge at the 6th Street turning basin. In the foreground, you can see that we are exploring multi-story landscape concepts, and we are working with our friends over at Scape to develop these conceptual ideas in partnership with the community. Next slide, please. This is now an elevation looking south, as if you were walking along the soon-to-be access alley. You can see here the subtle rise of the concrete pushwall and the interaction between the materials and forms of the facility. And last slide here. And lastly, this is an elevation of the salt lot looking from 2nd Avenue. You can see that the salt pile is tucked in there under the simple and refined form of the salt shed in the distance. The metal mesh screen in the foreground provides pedestrian visual access to the functions and happenings of the facility. We believe with the community that industrial architecture should be true to its function, that these function and forms can be designed and developed in a way that provides a neighboring backdrop that is intriguing and sublime. Again, I thank you for your time. My team and I look forward to continuing to hear from you and talk with the community. I now pass it on to Anna at Scape.
Hi, I'm Anna Hogalter, landscape architect with Scape. So since our last meeting, we've really had a chance to digest the input and discussions that we had with you in February. We're excited to have the opportunity to hear new voices and to continue the conversation today with you. So we started with developing our own design goals that can set forward the public realm design based on the overall project goals, balancing a number of different facilities, and integrating the public input that we heard from you in the last meeting. So we're really focused on improving the site resiliency to both inland flooding as well as accounting for climate change. We're focused on supporting ecological functions and environmental stewardship. We're providing public access to the water as well as along the waterfront, and celebrating the neighborhood's cultural and historic character. And while we're seeking to achieve all of these goals in the public realm design, we need to be sure to balance the variety of city services and operations that will be happening on site with the public programming, and to ensure site safety for this type of mixed use industrial area. Before we get into design, it's helpful to imagine the scale of this site compared to some other waterfront sites and other park sites that are nearby. You can see on the upper left top corner in yellow, this is our site. This is outlined around the primary public access areas of the water. We primarily have 2 narrow linear waterfront opportunities, as well as a couple larger contiguous program zones. In total, it's about 1.8 acres. You can imagine, if you're familiar with the soon to be constructed head end site at the head of the canal. This is the other Gowanus CSO facility that is under construction or will be soon. And it's a little bit smaller. You can see that it's a contiguous public realm zone. If you look, you can imagine 365 Bond Street, the waterfront there is about half the size of this site. another long linear narrow waterfront zone at Whole Foods just across the canal from our site. That's also about half the size. If you've been to Valentino Pier Park in Red Hook, that's about the same size as the site we're considering today. And lastly, Carroll Park is about the same size in Carroll Gardens, very different configuration of a total contiguous area. So to start our design process, we've divided the site into 3 primary zones. These are kind of naturally organized around the various city facilities that need to be on site, as well as different types of operations and maintenance needed for those sites. So you can see in gray, those are the primary city facilities, and then the waterfront zone in various colors. Again, though, we're calling the Canal waterfront at 2nd Avenue. Running along the canal is about a little less than half an acre, reaching what we're calling the point, the primary program zone along the canal. It's about 3/4 of an acre, and the basin, including another linear, narrow waterfront edge, as well as a good contiguous zone at 6th Street. And we started overlaying some key programming that we heard from the last meeting, starting to imagine what this space might feel like, but really trying to identify the various opportunities and constraints that exist within this site. There's a lot going on here. 2nd Avenue has a lot of vehicular use with the adjacent facility. There will be a lot of new vehicular needs with the CSO facility entering and maneuvering around 2nd Avenue, as well as in the access drive. But we see the 2nd Avenue again as a key pedestrian entry point up into the waterfront zone and along the waterfront canal and canal walkway. The larger zone here at the point, we've identified this as a great opportunity for tidal wetland design. In order to design a tidal wetland that can account for rising seas and changing climates, you need quite a bit of area to account for that sea level rise. So we see this as a great opportunity to investigate that type of use here, as well as have more outdoor classrooms that can really enhance and focus on the ecological stewardship that we heard from in the last meeting. Then as we move along the 6th Street turning basin, this is a new opportunity to have public access to the 6th Street turning basin. There's currently no public access here as it's all industrial. So this will be a new waterfront access point here. And we are exploring this as the primary zone for water access with a fully ADA accessible kayak launch and considering opportunities for a tidal grove, as well as having more program along 6th Street. So I will now turn it over to Gina, who can talk us through our concepts in more detail.
Thanks so much, Anna. So we're really excited. There was a lot of great feedback. A lot of it was able to be integrated. Some of it was not, and we're happy to talk through some of those decisions today. The plan that you see on the screen in front of you, I really want to stress this. This is a plan in progress. We want to be open and transparent about where the team is at. This project is a complicated project. It involves many different stakeholders, community members, different nonprofit organizations. It also involves many different agencies and infrastructure needs. And so this plan, while it's our working plan, it's a schematic diagram. Right now, it's not a fully resolved landscape plan. And it's in the process of being reviewed by not only DEP and DSNY, Big Reuse, and the Gowanus Canal Conservancy, the partners on the site. It's also being reviewed by the EPA, which is controlling and advising on the bulkhead and edge conditions and the overall Superfund cleanup, and also Parks Department, who will play a role in the long-term stewardship of this project. And so these different agencies are all influencing the development of the plan that you see in front of you. While it's still very much a draft, we came to you today to share this draft with you to get your feedback. And this is a really important point in the process. And so I will kind of talk through some of the elements here. There's a lot of development to go, right? So what we're looking at tonight is not really a fully fleshed out materials plan or exact path widths or exact shapes and forms of spaces. It's a very early kind of schematic of the different programs and locations on the site. And there's a lot more development that our collective teams will be working on. So I will walk, I think from the north side at the end of 2nd Avenue around the project, around the point. You can go back one quickly just for the overview, Anna, thank you. I think one of the really interesting things on this site is how the infrastructural elements, Kevin talked about the salt lot, Kevin from DEP talked about the CSO facility, and we also have these partners of Big Reuse and Gowanus Canal Conservancy on the site. The edges of all of these different facilities, while the salt lot has been more developed, the CSO facility is still in development, and Big Reuse and the Gowanus Canal Conservancy's facilities are all still in development. And so we're very excited about some of those edge conditions, but they're not yet resolved and shown here on the plan. So they're still in development as we're still talking with those different organizations. But working from the north side of the site around, there's a couple of very exciting moments. Canal Plaza for outdoor education and gathering at the end of 2nd Avenue. Walkways along the canal leading to larger community features. When we're looking at this large plan, I want to point out the shared street at the end of the access drive. If you remember the plan that Anna showed earlier on in the presentation, actually Alicia showed that plan. The plan we showed last week, last time we met, had the end of the access drive pulled way out towards the canal. Our team has really been working to pull that back as far as possible to expand the park space. So we have more public realm and less vehicular area within the project. And so we see that as a big success of many of these conversations. And we're proposing a shared street so there can be more of a flexible community space where vehicles and pedestrians can share the space. Anna mentioned the salt marsh at the point of the park space with many different exciting programs there. And then, of course, a very important emphasis on ADA accessible direct water access at the 6th Street portion of the project, a large, generous public realm with direct public access to the water, which we know is a priority for this community. We prioritize this site over the 2nd Avenue site with the conversation with all of the partners. There was a desire for, from the agency perspective, I think, concentrating water access in the 6th Street turning basin where it is safe and protected, where recreational boaters will have a little bit more transition space to move out to the expansive canal, and also where the 2nd Avenue end is analyzed by the engineering team and did not have capacity or width to support any type of truck or vehicle with a trailer and a turnaround and parking, adequate parking space for those zones. So just want to put those parameters out there because they help shape the site design. But let's move on to the next slide and we can kind of walk through this, the design proposal here, and then we will hear your thoughts on it. So looking at the Canal Plaza here at the end of the Canal waterfront, the end of 2nd Avenue, we were able to, again, pull that large turning radii back and prioritize more space for pedestrians at the end of 2nd Avenue. We know it's an important community overlook. There may be an opportunity to add more seating or a slight step down in that location. Our team is still investigating that. We're showing a plaza, a gathering plaza here along the canal. This overlaps with some needed vehicular access points to the CSO facility. And we see a lot of opportunity for integrating with the Seldorf's team structure around how to have the architecture and the landscape work together really well at this moment to educate around the CSO tank. A pedestrian would walk along the canal walkway and move towards the end of the shared street where we've placed amphitheater. So this is that shared street location that we're able to pull back the turning radii of the turnaround at the end, which we do need for issues of FDNY and fire compliance and site access for big reuse and the GCC, as well as the CSO facility. We've reduced that vehicular area as much as possible and tried to create a large scale community gathering space, this amphitheater that steps down closer to the water and also aligns with the Bond Street visual connection. So there'll be a really interesting connection across the canal from Bond to the amphitheater. So it's like dialogue across the canal. You can move to the next slide. These images just express there's some precedent for what these spaces could be like. We'd love to hear your thoughts on them. A waterfront walkway on the top left, a more amphitheater-like condition on the top right, the opportunity for a shared street on the bottom left. You could imagine this space hosting many different types of pop-up community events, food trucks, having space for pedestrians to take over the street for important days or important festivals, and the opportunity within this central gathering area and entry to have interpretive and educational elements like this beautiful example of a waterway inscribed into the pavement in the bottom right. Next slide. Here on the point, I think we're very excited about the point. It offers a lot of different diverse landscape experiences. I know that's been a priority of the Gowanus by Design work and the Gowanus Lowlands work to have these diverse ecosystems that represent the historical ecologies of the canal expressed within the physical fabric of this site and this project. So we've tried to be very responsive to that feedback. So we're in coordination, reaching out to the EPA about this marsh proposal at the tip, with the marsh facing the basin edge and transitioning between low marsh, high marsh, maritime meadows, scrublands, and that rich cross-section of ecosystems that can exist when you don't have a harsh slope, when you have a low, shallow gradient. So we're very excited about that. We think there's a great opportunity to have that kind of unravel into a community gathering space. You could actually host a group of people in an outdoor classroom format or informal seating format, looking over the marsh with a stage or a platform or a boardwalk at the base. We've also proposed elevated gathering space, a kind of flat, a non-stepped outdoor classroom on the tip of the point that would look over to the Gowanus Green site across the canal and be highly visible in the greater community. We think that space will provide really excellent views up the canal, down the canal, into the greater neighborhood. And the edge that interfaces with big reuse and the Gowanus Canal Conservancy has yet to be designed. So it's a bit of a placeholder right now, but we're excited for opportunities for more. We heard from all of you a desire for visual connection between these spaces. So as you're walking by, maybe there's potential to peek in or be invited into the GCC nursery or witness active composting happening. So I think we really want to embrace those opportunities to showcase the dynamic character of the site. We're also exploring the potential for a wetland shelf as shown on the bottom here on the 6th Street turning basin. It's highly conceptual, but we are starting those conversations because we see that as a great opportunity for more aquatic habitat. Next slide. These images just simply show these different range of conditions. Some New York City precedents, the tidal marsh at Hunters Point South as a place where that grade has been scooped away and water has been allowed to enter the site, which we hope to do here. A flexible lawn space for community gathering, demonstration gardens that can feature native plants. I think that's something we heard a great deal about in our last conversation with all of you and your fellow community members. And then we heard from the GCC and other partners that there's a desire for many types and scales of group gathering and outdoor education within the site, not just a single zone. Next slide. And then within this third zone, the basin, I think this is a very important part of the project. Parks Department in particular is very interested in ADA access throughout the project. Every program area, every piece of the site that is publicly accessible, it's going to be our goal to make it ADA accessible. So not just compliant, but really think about ADA accessibility. And so that is one of the driving criteria to locate the kayak launch in this location where we really have room to grade down the proper slopes to allow access to all for the waterfront. It's also at this core position right at the base of 6th Street, where it's very visible to the community. So it's easy to access. You can see here the slope embedded in the ground going to a lower program deck that could overlook the canal, and then a gangway or walkway out into the water that could lead to a kayak launch and floating platform. And so the exact configuration of this space is all in development, but the goal here is to create direct ADA accessible public waterfront and a nice park space at the base of 6th Street. That is very welcoming and inclusive and provides activity for many types of people and connects to the other elements of the park space. The next slide just shows some precedent images for this. Again, more of that connective walkway that links around. The potential here to have a much more lush and inviting green streetscape than exists today on 2nd Avenue. The concept of floating wetlands or a wetland shelf along that basin edge on the bottom left, and direct access for the water, both for recreational boating, but also for water-based education. So this is very important. So with that, I think I'll pass it back to Alicia to talk about our breakout rooms.
Yeah, thank you, Gina. So we're going to break out into 2 workshop groups now. They'll be facilitated by Escape and Seldorf with the rest of the project team as well. So this should happen automatically, but there may be a small pause in your Zoom while it sorts you, so don't be alarmed. We are really eager to hear your thoughts. I've seen a lot of activity in the chat. But I just want to remind everyone, like, let's please keep our comments concise and focus on the design and program and respectful. We want to make sure that we hear from everybody that we can, but you can always get in touch with us and there'll be some information about that towards the end of the meeting. So with that, Gurma, can you please sort everybody? We'll see you on the other side. If you could put the PowerPoint back up for the last slides. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to wait for other folks to come back in. I think someone was mid-sentence in the other room. Okay, I think we have everyone back. Okay, so I just wanted to end with talking about our next steps. Anna, if you want to go to the next slide. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight and taking the time. We were all saying, like, it's such beautiful weather outside. We were worried no one was going to come. So we appreciate everybody and all the really meaningful feedback that you've given us tonight. We're really pleased to be able to share where we're at. And as we continue through this process, we will have more opportunities for these types of meetings. Our next public meeting in this sort of public engagement meeting style will be in the fall. But in the interim, we're going to start moving through the community board process. And so our next step with that will be presenting the salt shed designs to Community Board 6's Parks and Environmental Protection Committee in June. We had a lot of great feedback tonight. As I said, if something else occurs to you or you want to follow up on something, you can reach us at the email address listed here. And these, the main meeting and the breakout rooms were both recorded, and those will be available on our YouTube site, which is youtube.com/NYC-Water. So again, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate all of the feedback. You know, as this is coming together, it's just really important to understand folks' priorities, and we really appreciate your familiarity with this area and your expertise. So thank you all for joining us tonight, and we hope to see you again soon at our next meetings.
Could we get a brief synopsis of what each group has contributed?
So I don't think that we have time for that this evening. As I said, everything's going to be up on our YouTube page, and you'll be able to see all of the notes have been taken down. And then what our team does is they combine all of that stuff, and then we'll be able to also report back on that at the next meeting. So thank you guys for everything, and I hope that everyone is taking care. Good night.